Hey, what's going on? So in this video, I want to talk about riding a time trial at the most effective pace based on the course. And we've talked about this on the podcast before, but I never posted a YouTube video, and getting some visuals here from two athletes that successfully rode a sub 20-minute prologue time trial and got themselves on the podium. This is in the southeast of the US. And what we want to understand is that riding the fastest pace is not riding at threshold. You need to be able to surge. You need to have trained your VO2 max, not only for surges, but training your VO2 max is going to increase your functional threshold power. It's going to increase your maximal aerobic power, aerobic using oxygen. So let's run through this scenario. And when you see how this power is presented, you can put this into practice when you have a time trial. But this is also, I talked about this. This is how I truly believe you should be riding your solo breakaways. This is how actually not the time trial, but the Tour of North Georgia was a great result for me when I won, because I bridged to the break and eventually shredded with Michael Hernandez to the finish. And he was like, yo, dude, I'm just hanging on. I'm not going to sprint you. And it was all about smashing the climbs, getting aero, and going as fast as possible on downhills. But had I ridden at 100% FTP, we would have been caught. So this first portion that you can read is what the athlete, who I've been coaching for a while, he's in tune with the time trial, and he nailed a lot of these points. This route sounds like a great candidate for a negative split. We're going to talk about that. Get up to speed, but don't go out too hard. That's the first rule of time trialing. Don't start too hard. Ride that descent maximally aero. This is the course you can see here. Punch up the first steep climb, dial it back on the subsequent descent, and recover. Oops, sorry. Don't mess up the turnaround. Save the watts for the second half and roast the reverse climb, longer but less steep. Take the next descent as aero as one can, then truly empty the tank, life or death, on the climb to the finish. Work harder in the second half than the first. That is key. So I'm not necessarily talking about a negative split in terms of time, even though that would be great. I'm looking at this as negative split in terms of, look at this course. This is so much more, it's all uphill basically, right? You're going to use momentum here, and we'll talk about that. But these two long portions, you are going to be putting out so much power then that you need to make sure you haven't blown a gasket in the first 3.5 miles. And there really should be no reason that you do that, because you are focusing on one thing: fast average speed. Speed is the only thing that matters in any cycling race. Has the fastest speed when it really matters, especially in a time trial. Surging over the first climb, not only do you want to use momentum, but has some relative steepness to it. You want to surge over this. You want to also, having trained VO2 max, you're going to know whether you've done hard starts or constant power. I mean, I guess if you're only doing VO2 maxes 30-15s, you might not have this sense, but you should definitely do some riding where you're riding over threshold and then falling back to threshold or higher. This whole except for when you're going aero and conserving here, anytime you are pedaling, it is over threshold in this type of race. It's sub 20 minutes. You should have no problem doing that. If you cannot, then you need to ask yourself some questions about training and why do you not have those types of matches. Also, know the feeling. You should be able to answer to yourself on board and knowing the course, am I putting out too much power above threshold that when I get to point X, Y, and Z up the road, I'm going to be out of juice, right? You can only ride above threshold for so long. There needs to be some recovery at some point. You cannot, I mean, you could technically ride 102% for 20 minutes, but if you are really going hard on these specific portions of the course that we're talking about, there's going to need to be some recovery. And so you just need to be mapping this out as you're going through space. First half on the way back, make sure you're using your momentum. So you're getting as fast as you can here. And we talked about negative split in terms of power. way more watts are needed on the second half of this course. So do not go too hard. We always used to say the first 3 rules of a time trial: don't start too hard, don't start too hard, and don't start too hard. While that more applies to a flat course when everyone's feeling good in the first 5 minutes, then you realize, uh-oh, I've gone too hard. You magically don't have 50 more watts on the day of the event. You're amped, you're hyped, you're ready to go, but it's an easy way to falter. And I'll put a link in here to a blog talking about pacing a time trial. But I'll put the link in the other video of the breakaway move. That is very applicable to this type of course. Now, this is one rider who got on the podium. You can see surging. My only comment, this is a little downhill and this is a little downhill. My one comment to them was, here they needed to probably stay on the gas if possible. They rode this really well. And I believe this is the person that won. And then look at the other rider. This is the person who came in. Did they win also, actually? Now I'm confusing the second rider if they had the road race. There were a lot of events going on. I'll have to look back. Both were on the podium. I can't remember if they both won or not. Maybe start a little bit harder. Maybe the power meter didn't pick up. This is a solid surge. And even though they didn't go as deep here, they kept it more consistent, which I kind of like. And you can see they're almost riding this exactly the same. This is like almost the exact same rider. So they're both listening to the same advice: go hard on the uphills. Now, if they had more gas in the tank, we wanted to see this a little bit more deep, but also at the same time, they pedaled more here than this person. So end of the day, where do you want to pedal the most, where you can make up the most time, which is uphill, which is into a headwind. Everyone's going to be going fast downhill. And a lot of people are going to not ride hard here because in the first 15 minutes, they've gone too hard. So pacing is super important, but you can ride above threshold a lot. And you need to do that if you are breaking away, if you're riding a prologue time trial, if you're riding a normal TT. I mean, this was almost under 20 minutes for both of them. Hopefully this helps you. Think about the course. Think about the conditions. Think about where are you going fast? How can you make your average speed the highest? That is what matters. Surge. Make sure your training includes that. We're not talking about 20-second surges. We're talking about 2, 3, 4-minute surges so that then you can do this over and over and over again. Hopefully this was helpful, and check out the full blog for more information, more tips. And if you're listening to this as a podcast, please leave us a 5-star review. If you're on YouTube, please like and share. Do all the things to help the algorithms. Thanks, everybody. Good luck with your training.